Welcome to the InnovaBuzz podcast, where our job is to help you build visibility, professional credibility, and connection with your ideal client by putting the human at the centre of innovative marketing, so you can build and strengthen an engaging, enduring relationship with your ideal clients. I'm Jürgen Strauss from InnovaBuzz, and I'm honoured that you're here with me. If you haven't joined our wonderful marketing transformation community yet, go to innovabiz.co and collect your free gift as well. Do subscribe to the show and also leave a review because it helps others find us. Let's get into today's masterclass on this InnovaBuzz podcast.
The other thing that I do is I never close a sale. People find it just so amusing. I take people right up to the rebuttals and then I go, listen, just you think about it, and I walk away. Because for me, it's a test of whether they're fully on my hook or not. Are they a raving fan or not? If your brand is on point and really connected emotionally with people, and if your marketing has helped deliver the most important messages that you want to communicate about who you are, what you believe in, and how you can seriously serve them, you don't need to close. It's done.
Hi there, Innovator. It's great to be back with you and with another episode of the InnovaBuzz podcast. I hope you're really well, staying safe, and I hope you've had an awesome week so far. I trust too that you enjoyed my recent conversations with John Andrews of Photify and with Gino Wickman, author of Traction, Get a Grip and the Entrepreneurial Leap, and of course the creator of the Entrepreneurial Operating System. I'm really excited today to have as my guest on the InnovaBuzz podcast, Paris Cutler. Paris is a blue ocean strategist with a mission to assist entrepreneurs, social media influencers and corporate executives in creating a fulfilling career that vibrates with success and meaning. Paris is a 5 times published author, a speaker, and the former CEO of Planet Cake, which she transformed from a tiny cake shop to a #1 national brand and 7-figure business. Planet Cake was known as the cake maker to the stars, with celebrity clients such as Rihanna, Lady Gaga, Celine Dion and Katy Perry. Paris's cake decorating school became the largest hobbyist school in the Southern Hemisphere and taught over 6,000 students. And on top of all that, Paris has had her own TV show called Planet Cake, which was on the Lifestyle Channel in Australia and also syndicated worldwide. In our discussion, Paris talked to me about why word-of-mouth marketing is the best marketing method there is and how you can utilize it well. We talked about serving by responding to your clients' unmet needs. And Paris shared with us some future trends, such as the click-mortar model. To find out more about that, without further ado, let's fly into the hive and get the buzz from Paris Cutler. Hi, I'm your host, Jürgen Strauss from InnovaBuzz, and I'm really excited to welcome to the InnovaBuzz podcast today from Sydney in Australia, Paris Cutler, who's a business and blue sky strategist. She's an author and an educator. Welcome to the InnovaBuzz podcast, Paris. It's a real privilege to have you as my guest.
Oh, and an absolute pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Chris Yankolowski, who was our guest on episode 278 of the InnovaBuzz podcast, suggested that we have a conversation with you. So a big hello to Chris.
Oh, wow. Thank you so much, Chris. That's a huge compliment. I appreciate it.
And I think that was a connection on LinkedIn, which is quite amazing too.
Yeah, very powerful platform. I love LinkedIn.
All right. Now, as we record this, we're kind of in the midst of the coronavirus outbreak here in Australia, and we're finding ourselves having to stay at home, having to work from home, and having to kind of change
Mm.
things that we do. And I thought that would be a good topic to explore from the point of view of what does business look like in the future. But before we start talking about that and business growth and blue sky strategy, tell us a little bit about your background. I know, you had a cake decorating business, you had your own TV show.
Mm.
All of that was very successful, and then you kind of walked away from that and decided it was time for a change. So tell us a little bit about some of those key moments and how you got to where you are today.
Okay, so I'm a born entrepreneur, the type that was setting up a shop at the top of your driveway when you're 6 years old, and I never stopped. And so at my heart and my core, I'm an entrepreneur, but I didn't have any capital. I didn't come from a business family. And so I was really thinking, how am I going to do this? So I started off as a trader working for a stockbroking company when I first left school, and I met a lot of entrepreneurs and I got my education that way. That's just after the 87 crash. And so entrepreneurialism then isn't what it is now. It was considered a kind of a bit weird. There weren't many role models to follow. We certainly didn't have it as a kind of a career option in Australia. After I did stockbroking, I had a lot of fun, but I got burnt out. I then went on to study law. I then got into recruitment, and then I found my first opportunity, which was had a couple of consulting businesses, but I was really looking for a B2C business where I could create a huge brand. And I was really enamored with Richard Branson and what he did with Virgin, the idea of creating a massive brand and being able to stick multiple revenue streams underneath it. I mean, the fact that I'd never done any marketing or branding in my life didn't occur to me that that would be a problem or a challenge.
Well, I think Richard Branson is a pretty good model, though.
Yeah. So, I mean, I loved Richard. I loved what he did. So I bought a tiny little cake shop. I got the idea when I ordered my wedding cake, which was dreadful. And what I was looking for was a product that could be visual, I could create a great brand around and do something different around that no one had done before. And cakes at that time were very unpopular. No one liked them. They were horrible. People hated fondant icing. I mean, you can't even fathom this because now cakes are a mainstream kind of item. They're food porn. But back then they were food yuck. And so I bought this tiny little cake shop in Balmain called Planet Cake. It had one employee. It was so small that you couldn't swing a cat. But I had big dreams. And eventually over the course of over a decade, we turned that into a #1 national brand. I published 5 books. We turned it into a multi-7-figure business. I mean, we had celebrity clients like Nicole Kidman, Rihanna, Katy Perry, John Travolta, Keith Urban. And we had the largest hobbyist school in the Southern Hemisphere. TV show, all of that type of good stuff. So I did end up achieving what I wanted to achieve. It was a really, really big brand. It was very well recognized as a lifestyle brand. And my next step was that my TV show went global, as did my books. And so we were shown in over 25 countries. My books were translated into 7 languages. So the next step for me would be to open in Germany or overseas in America. And I certainly had offers to do that. I had offers to release my own equipment range. I had more TV offers. They wanted me on Celebrity Apprentice, things like that. And I had what I refer to now as a kind of massive success implosion, which was something that I think is quite common, but people don't talk about. And that is that I reached the top of my mountain, I stuck my flag in, and rather than being delighted and happy and elated and winning, and everyone thought I was winning, I was empty, confused, unhappy, and I started to implode. And I now have a better idea of what happened to me, but obviously at the time I had no idea what was happening to me. I mean, I should have been on fire. I should have been the happiest I'd ever been in my life. I was really kicking goals. So I now understand that I basically wanted success for success' sake. I was running on empty. I was missing a hell of a lot of meaning. and I just wanted to be a number one national brand and then a number one international brand. But internally, I was probably quite spiritually poor and emotionally really poor. And so what tends to happen is we reach the peak of our mountain, and lots of celebrities do this, lots of sporting people do this. You see people implode at the peak of their success, and it really doesn't make much sense. Like, why did Tiger Woods implode? Why do people like Justin Bieber start to implode when they seem to have everything that you could possibly imagine? And the reason is because it's not fulfilling. Success isn't fulfilling in unto itself, but you only realize that when you're actually at the top of your mountain.
Yeah, is that because your whole life is consumed by striving for that success, and then you reach it, you suddenly realize there's nothing else to strive for, or you think there's nothing else to strive for?
I think that's part of it. I think a lot of it is that we strive for success because we believe that it's going to make us happy. So all of the driven people that I met, like the serious high achievers, the serious entrepreneurs, like people that are not doing it for a lifestyle but looking to build empires, they're usually driven by hardship at some point in their life. You know, they're not coming from the best of backgrounds, or there's some pain that they're leaving in the past and moving forward to success, that oasis of happiness and fulfillment. And for the 10 to 12, for the 5 to 10 years that you take climbing the mountain, you're totally consumed with climbing the mountain. So you're moving away from all those negative feelings, say feelings of low self-worth or uncomfortable relationship that you have with your partner or your father or parents, or, you weren't popular at school or you were bullied. You're able to move away from all of that. And the oasis is when I'm on top of the mountain and I have all of that success, I'm going to feel fantastic. None of those ugly feelings are going to touch me anymore. And then you get there and you feel exactly the same.
Yeah.
As you did at the beginning of your journey, just with all the success and trappings.
That's a interesting contrast, isn't it? Because when I get there, I'll be happy or I won't feel these feelings. Is like you can choose to be happy, you can choose to feel different feelings, or if you're feeling sad over being bullied at school or bad relationships, then it's a choice you've made, even though you may not be conscious that you've made that choice. And so getting to some successful point in your business or life, you still have to make a choice about your feelings, don't you?
Yeah, you do. And then you think, well, I've been sold this big giant myth. I thought creating a massive big empire and having this big brand and being, having some semblance of fame would make me really happy. And it hasn't. And then it's like, well, what next? Well, then that started me on a really big personal journey of what is it to be successful? What is it to find true, happiness? And a lot of that is reliant on meaning. What we're really looking for is meaning. And so my real talent is for blue ocean strategy and as a business person and as an entrepreneur. And I use that now in a way to help businesses, but I align it with some meaning. And it's interesting that branding and marketing is now also focused on a higher, a deeper purpose, values, more meaning. And I think even just, the general public are looking for that. It's not just, crashed out people like me that reached the top of the mountain and got burned. We're all looking for that.
Well, I think there's an element to a lot of the successful brands that are out there, and you mentioned Virgin earlier. I think there's a big element of this with Virgin is that there's an emotional connection to their tribe, their audience, their clients. And I think that emotional connection has to come back to what's the meaning of that brand? Why are they doing what they're doing? And what's the meaning for their audience in that?
Absolutely. We want to know what they care about, and we want to know why we should invest our time and money into them. It comes back to that connection. And I believe that connection is strongest when we're powered by what's meaningful to us. And so Yeah. So I use my skills as a business person now to help people identify that and build really successful businesses in new markets.
All right. So what does success mean to you today?
Oh, success is like I'm just living the dream now. So I get out of bed every day and I work with the most amazing clients across the world. So from New York to Monaco to Australia to Germany, Ireland, across industries, working with entrepreneurs. So success to me is jumping out of bed and having a day that I would do without getting paid. I mean, I love it. I love business. I love entrepreneurs and business people. That to me is my happy place. And I get to do that with all different types of business people all day. So I love it. I'm having a ball. So success is meaningful work that I would do even if I didn't get paid for it.
Okay. So, yeah, when we started out the conversation, I mentioned that we're all going through this situation with the coronavirus right now, and people are having to practice social distancing, and a lot of physical businesses are moving to working from home. And I heard somebody say this morning that the future has come early. And I thought that was a really good way to look at it, because you mentioned working with clients all around the world, and obviously that's possible because of the internet and all the communication tools that are enabled through the internet. A lot of businesses haven't quite embraced that yet, but they're being forced to do so now. So what do you see as some of the trends that maybe before, if we had have talked a month or two ago, were out 5 years, but are now being brought forward, and how can people embrace those so that their business is stronger as a result?
I think habit is a really strong thing. And I'd have to say that my clients have been stuck into a belief structure and a set of habits that have been really hard to break. So you're right. I'm seeing my clients are enacting strategies that I advised them to take a year ago. They're now doing, all of a sudden, we have to turn it around in 3 weeks now. So that includes, say, for the fitness business I work with, we're getting their classes are up and streaming. And that means you halve your membership fee, but they've increased their membership views. So instead of having a class of 30, they've now got a class of 50 plus, and we're looking at having classes of 250, maybe 1,000 people. With the fashion designer I work with in New York, I've wanted her to get up a pop-up online, selling online for so long now, and we're suddenly doing that all of a sudden. The cake company, the food company I work with in regional Australia, I've desperately wanted them to partner with different distributors, such as supermarkets, franchisees. Instead of just having their retail shop, they're suddenly doing that. And they've got a deal going with the IGA supermarket chain right now, which has just happened in the last 2 weeks. So I guess with many people, and this isn't their fault, have still had businesses that have been set up for yesterday, not taking advantage of the tools such as online, not taking advantage of the fact that they have a global audience, not really taking advantage of the different distribution channels that are available to them, and the fact that people are more willing to collaborate and partner up than they ever have been before. And I think it's just really because they haven't had to. So the really good thing that's coming out of current circumstances is the tools are available for us to innovate. Now, that was a bit different during the GFC, which I went through, and many, many businesses perished. The tools were available, but the knowledge wasn't as free as it is now, and the tools were more expensive than they are now. So this is there's no barrier to entry for my, my older clients or less tech-savvy clients to jump in and start innovating. So... Yeah, I think the future's not just here, it's also readily available and it's cheap. If you're not jumping on, that's a mindset issue.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And changing some habits. I think I love James Clear's book, the there's something about the habit finder. I think I'm not exactly sure of the title now, but Atomic Habits, that's what the title is. And the premise is, changing small things as habits will lead to much more longer term sustainable changes in behavior. And when you put it in the context of business, changes to the business model.
Yeah, so changes to and changes to our way of thinking. We get set in a way of thinking about our businesses. That has changed. Consumer buying behavior has changed. In the last 10 years, it's changed. And I cannot stress that enough. People are still locked into, well, this worked a decade ago, that's how we became number one. It won't keep you at number one.
Yeah. All right. I love the example of the fitness studio. I think that really highlights it well in terms of what are the opportunities there. So if you've got a physical fitness studio, then it's people in the local area that would be your potential clients. And so you've automatically limited that geographically. Now moving online streaming, all of a sudden it's available globally. You've got access to a global audience. And in this day and age, with what's going on, people are desperate to have something like that because they can't get to their local gym anymore. So I think that's a really great example. So do you have any other examples like that, or any ideas for different industries that they could leverage that kind of thing and make a service available to an audience that now is kind of desperate for these things, looking for that connection that they can get online to replace what they're missing now in the current environment?
Okay. The way I approach things is probably a little bit differently. So I look at things, I'm a blue ocean strategist, meaning that I look for new markets. And when I look at new markets, I'm looking particularly for underserved consumers. So if, for example, you had a waste business, what I'd be looking at now is pivoting myself to looking at disposing of medical waste, because there's going to be a huge amount of medical waste that we're going to be needing to dispose of. So that's just kind of an example. In terms of streaming specifically, I think whereas previously people were used to maybe dealing with their coach and they were, I think we're going to have streamed events. I think we're going to have streamed masterminds. I think that you can actually, I was on a doTERRA streamed presentation to sell oils the other day. I think that if you want to do some cooking classes, you can do that. So, you've got the best thing about right now is we've got a captive audience. At least for the next few months, we've got a sit-down captive audience. So whereas you would have had trouble cutting through and capturing them before, you certainly don't currently. However, that won't always be the case. As the months go along, people will be returning to work and hustling along and getting their businesses up and going. But what I think streaming might have brought you as an option is the idea of accessing a much larger audience base. And this is what I'm really trying to get people to think about is, if you're in the fitness game, why are you just focusing locally? And why don't you also specialize? If you've got a low global audience, you can afford to specialize in younger people, older people, people with injuries. I mean, you can be streaming all day with specialist classes. You're not limited. I spoke to some makeup artists and hair people. They're like, what are we going to do? Our industry and business is over. I'm like, well, look at the demographic that has not been targeted by this youth-obsessed culture that your industry is in. 50 plus men and women looking to improve the way that they look on camera, in webinars, or just generally. Get it going on. There's nothing on YouTube for older people. I mean, just a limited amount. Oh, my hairdresser, he just raced off and started making videos immediately for people doing webinars. So I guess what I'm saying is it's unlimited if it responds to consumers' needs right now and in the coming months. And so you've got to look at your customer avatars, look at the customers that you may not have even looked at targeting before. And you need to think, what are their needs right now? Well, I can tell you right now, as we're recording this interview, they're bored, they're stressed. Some of them are having difficulty sleeping. They're emotionally eating. They're having trouble adjusting to working from home. They're probably dealing with uncertainty. Relationship problems are on the increase. Conflict is on the increase. They're buying online, which I think a lot of online stores have just totally forgotten and completely dropped the ball. I tried to buy something yesterday. No one's got back to me. It's like, we're on lockdown. It doesn't mean you shut shop. So think about your customer and then see if you can pivot a current service or product to the customers as they are at now, or create a new service. So what some of my clients have done is the same product. They're just operationally doing it differently, which means live streaming classes. But what I did in the GFC was create a totally new market. So during the GFC, I sold cakes. I think this illustrates what I'm talking about. I sold event cakes and, they were $800 to $2,500 each. I had a very wealthy customer base. And just before the GFC hit, I took on a huge amount of overheads. I hired many staff. I got a huge big factory. I leased a big factory, took on all this debt, and my pipeline was full. And I was, it was after 5 years of hard work, it was just like, this is it, I'm just about to take off. And August 2008 hit, and within 3 weeks, 90% of my pipeline had cancelled. So all of the events had cancelled, just like the wedding industry and the events industry is struck down today. And so did people want to buy a cake? No, they didn't. And there's no amount of streaming or getting around it that you could possibly do. They weren't going to have any events. And if they did, they were going to be very, on the down low. So what do you do in that situation? It's not going to be solved by technology. And there's lots of people out there with businesses that it is not going to be solved by technology. So what I said to myself was, okay, what do people do in an economic downturn traditionally? In an economic downturn, people turn inward. People go home. It's family, it's home-cooked meals, it's hobbies, it's home renovations. They go inwards. They always have done. They go to community. So I thought, well, no one's going to have any big weddings. No one's going to have any big events. What can I do to be part of that new market? And so I had those little classes on the weekend teaching people cake decorating. And I just was pitching it at mums for a little bit of extra coin and to use my premises, basically sweat the asset. But I then ramped it up. And my cake decorating classes, I pivoted within a week, started marketing those towards people at home, mothers looking at doing birthday parties for their kids. It just grew exponentially. And within 2 years, that cake decorating school was a 7-figure business and became the massive revenue driver for my business and became the largest hobbyist school in the Southern Hemisphere. And, went on to teach some of the biggest cake stars in the world today. So you can take your product or service in this time of disruption and you can find a new market. That's why I brought up the medical waste stuff. There's going to be a new market for you because there's different needs out there. And what I'm finding is that tone deaf of like, well, this is the business plan I wrote 18 months ago, so I'm just going to charge along with this and try and dress it up a little bit differently. Wrong.
Yeah. What I really like about that is, I mean, you kind of touched on it early on in telling your story, and it was around understanding who your client is and what their needs are. And that's something that we work with a lot with our clients. But I think the important thing there is to keep that up to date, keep that understanding up to date. And you touched on, what are people feeling right now because they're because of the situation. So they're forced to work from home, they're forced to socially isolate. And so what does that bring with it? And then what are the unmet needs that come out of that? So I think that's a really good analysis to take up right now.
Yeah. So I'm actually setting up some of my clients to launch businesses in this depressed economy that's going to be coming out. It's a great time while everybody is still trying to push ahead with their business plan from 18 months ago and wondering why it won't stick. And while people are floundering around, if you can get really clear that we're in a different economy with customers with different needs, you can actually launch a really successful business or a new service or product line on your existing brand that will kill it.
Yeah, that's great advice. All right. And one of the things I'm fascinated by is if you then look out, say, 5 to 10 years on that plan, is that what you're advising your customers as well, to say, well, okay, you're being forced to make changes right now because of the environment and the situation, and here's how you might be able to do that. Now, what does that look like going out 5 to 10 years? Let's say changing some of those fundamental habits right now, and what does that open up?
I'm really thrilled that you actually raised that question. It's a great question, because what I'm trying to really instill in people is in 5 to 10 years, this whole landscape will have changed completely. And we need to create businesses for 5 to 10 years' time, not the way they've always been done. So, for example, we're looking at a click mortar setup for retail shopping. What do I mean by that? I mean, the majority of shopping will be done online in 5 to 10 years' time, but people will be wanting to have very elevated brand experiences with their brands of choice. So they would like to go, so the retail shops will still exist, but they'll be smaller and they'll be set up to create brand experiences. So you would go to a shop like Telsa has done this really well in Martin Place in Sydney. You would go, you could try on some of the outfits, you could have a brand experience. So people still see shopping as entertainment. They like to have a social experience with their friends. They really like to experience their brands. So it would all be set up to generate experiences. However, shopping would be done online. We call that a click mortar model. What we're seeing with regards to offices is, office environments are going to change. I mean, one of the things I really love is that work share, office share arrangement is going to become the norm. And we're looking at, environments where just are blank spaces, and we'll be actually able to change the spaces using like hieroglyphics and things like that. So actually, interactive workspaces, that's what we're looking at. So everything's going to become really flexible. We're going to be seeing, 40% of our jobs as part of the gig economy. So there'll be fewer and fewer kind of actual full-time careers to engage in. Most people will have to adopt entrepreneurial skills and will be part of a very, a flourishing kind of gig economy. There's all sorts of changes that are going to be coming, and it's not just about technology. I think the big change in technology has already really hit. We've had that huge, massive learning curve that we've had to go through. What we're going to be seeing in the next 10 years is a different way that people shop, changes in consumer buying behavior, people really buying into brands in a big way, including personal brands and the way they want to interact with them and the type of experiences that they want to have, and the social changes. That's what we're going to be seeing over the next 10 years, which is, this period is really interesting to me because this has put a huge emphasis on community and a huge emphasis on the fact that we're global. No question. Don't try arguing that with now. We all caught the same cold. Well, it's not a cold, but you know what I mean? Like China sneezed, we all got it. So the days of denying that are over.
That's right. Yeah. And it's pretty amazing when you think about how quickly this has spread right throughout the world. And you think, well, what else could we actually, something that's productive rather than destructive like this, what else could we get that will spread so quickly throughout the world, and how can we use that to actually improve the well-being of humanity?
Yeah. I mean, and I just think more than ever, people have had a really big reality check, and the rise of the conscious consumer has been on the rise for the last 5 years. But even people like my father, a climate change denialist, someone that said no to same-sex marriage, the whole, toot sweet caused a lot of arguments in our family, he's coming on board. So my gosh, he's my litmus test for when things are really changing. So the conscious consumer is here. We're going to see them as the norm. So if you're just going around as a one-dimensional brand, spruiking stuff and throwing in some steak knives, prepare for it to be over.
Well, I think, you talked about the click mortar model earlier, and the click mortar model, I think, is something that actually has been in operation for quite some time, but the retailer hasn't acknowledged it. So, for example, I do most of so I'm a keen bike rider, as my regular listener knows. I do most of my bike gear shopping online, and yet I go to the bike store first to see it physically, have that experience, and then I go and buy it online because generally it will be a lot cheaper. Now, some really good bike stores will be able to sell me something there.
Yeah.
And I always kind of am observant to that sales experience, whereas the majority are still kind of like, that's the price and take it or leave it. And I think, well, I'll get it 20%. I get exactly the same thing 20% cheaper online. And particularly if they don't have it in stock, they say, we'll order it for you and you'll get it in a week. Well, I can go home and order online and I'll probably have it in less than a week.
Yeah.
With some of the good mail order stores. So I think it's been happening, and I suspect, that I'm not the only person doing that. I think it's been happening for quite some time. So if people actually, the retailer will adapt to that situation, there's a huge opportunity there. And I know there's one or two examples of that already happening now.
I think that I agree with you entirely. And, putting it that way, of course, that's what we all do. And it seems like, well, if that's the way people are shopping, why aren't the retailers responding to it? And why aren't people responding to the way people are actually shopping now? I think two reasons. First of all, a lot of the big retailers have these huge Goliaths that they're trying to turn around and respond to that need. But I think the second thing is, and I mean, I'm going to sound like a bit of a kind of a, I don't want this to come across the wrong way, but people think of branding and marketing as a set of techniques, tricks. It's so tricky. Like, I just got to work out this trick and I'll get people through my door. Business is really simple to me. Business is getting someone to come through your front door to buy your product or service. It is no more tricked up than that. You can take on as many different kind of avenues to get there as you want to, but that's the end goal. Someone to come through the front door and buy your product or service. Now, when I had Planet Cake, I knew nothing about marketing or branding, and I'm so pleased that I didn't, because what I worked out was this. What is the best form of marketing that you could possibly engage in? Cheap and effective. I just want to know one strategy. I haven't got money. I don't have much time. I've got to turn around this cake shop. And it is word of mouth. Okay. How do I get people talking about my business? Guess what? It's called customer experience. And so all of my energy went into generating amazing customer experiences. And that means every touch point of your business is amazing. Now, I'd like to say to you that you organizing this podcast interview for me was amazing. You organized it, you checked in with me, you had you had a beautiful admin person follow up. Like, everything was just seamless. It was a positive experience. Every touch point was a positive experience. At Planet Cake, every touch point, from the phone call, from the email, my staff were always happy and delighted to see you. We always made sure that the customer had a stress-free environment. You got loads of free cakes. We just piled it on. It's called experience. People don't focus on it enough. And they're thinking social media, they're thinking my profile, they're thinking funnels, they're thinking advertising, they're thinking Google, they're thinking everything except who are the people that actually come to you and what's their experience like? Because if it's really good, they'll tell 10 to 20 people how good it was. I'm going to tell people how great this podcast interview was. To me,
thank you.
It's like a no-brainer. It's not that complex.
And I'm so glad you said about the customer experience, because one of the things that we are really strong on here is about the marketing. Yes, there's tactics and there's ways to get in front of your ideal client and have them find out about you. But really, marketing doesn't stop when they've made the purchase. It's all about the customer experience, because that's where you'll scale the marketing efforts, and people will talk about you, as you say. And I've started doing some daily videos just to show up regularly for my audience. And one of the things I talked about last week, because my Samsung phone, and I will mention them here, died. And this was in the days when they just started the social distancing and not being able to go out to shops and so on. And getting some information from the Samsung support chat online, which was the only way to get in touch with them, was a nightmare. It was an absolute nightmare, so much so that, and I'll spare the whole story, but so much so that I said, well, if I have to replace the phone now, the last phone I'm going to buy is a Samsung. It doesn't matter what features and what they have, and I know they've got some really good phones, but I'm not going to buy another Samsung because of this experience. So it is really important.
Totally. I mean, one of the first things I've gotten all my clients to do is to reach out to all of their clients and all of their network and ask them how they are.
Mm.
How are you? It's a really challenging time right now. Are you okay? That goes a long way. It's just, it's crazy to me that it has become so complex to reach your audience. People will become, your whole goal should be to have everybody that comes into contact with you and your business, or you and your client's business, to be an absolute raving fan. So every client every potential person that I meet is either going to come on board with me as a client, or they're going to tell everybody how fantastic I am. That's my goal. I only have two goals. And if I was to use your services, then that would be great. I could even reach a greater number of people. But that has to be your intention, not to sell something. That's a natural consequence. That's not the goal.
That's right.
The goal is to create raving fans. And so with the assistance of someone like you, I mean, I could reach even more people, but that should be your only thing. So right now, if you were to create raving fans, meet them where they're at. What are they doing right now? What are they going through? What are their needs? How are they feeling emotionally? If your intention is to serve and create an incredible experience, then you'll meet them and you'll make money for sure. So I always say to people, think about what their current experience is right now. So when it was in the cake world, people buying cakes, they were usually stressed. The cakes were 3 times more than they wanted to spend. It was usually at the end of a long buying cycle for their wedding or event. They were over it. They were usually arguing. Their mother-in-law was getting on their nerves. And, they'd come in all cranky. And what they expected was a photo album, someone with a cardigan that wasn't in particularly interested in them, and some dried up cake samples, and that was it. It wasn't much of an experience. And so we just addressed every single one of those points. And so like what you're doing right now is reaching out to your audience even more, because they're isolated. And I mean, that's the first strategy, checking in with people and over communicating and reaching out even more to where they're at, and considering what their current experience is and making it better, creating a vision for what the perfect customer experience would be, and creating that.
Yeah, I love that. So much great advice there, Paris. I really appreciate it. And I'm
coming off as a bit of bit too much.
No, this is wonderful. I could go on talking ages about customer advice and customer service and experience, because I absolutely agree with you. That's the core of marketing. It's taking somebody from their current state, which typically will be an undesirable state in whatever circumstance that is, because they've come to you looking for something, and transforming them into what their desired state is, and then making sure that you kind of guide them on that journey the whole way. And as you say, then they become a raving fan and they do your marketing for you.
Yeah, so my goal is not sales. My goal is raving fans. And I mean, now I'm like, I mean, it's just always worked. It's that simple.
Yeah.
Create raving fans.
Yeah.
I mean, so I've got this strategy, two things that people always find really amusing. The first thing is, if I can't help someone, I always recommend someone that can help them. And I'll actually even bring up that person, say another coach. I've got lots of coaches on my book, and I say, need leadership coaching. I know the perfect person. And I imagine, I've met with these people, and I'll put them in touch, and I'll connect them on LinkedIn or wherever it is. And people are like, why would you do something like that? You know why? Because they actually will always still recommend me because they 100% trust me now. Yeah. The other thing that I do is I never close a sale. People find it just so amusing. I take people right up to the rebuttals, and then I go, listen, just you think about it, and I walk away. Because for me, it's a test of whether they're fully on my hook or not. Are they a raving fan or not? And they come running. You didn't give us a quote. We haven't received a quote yet, Paris. You didn't send through an invoice. We're really scared of missing out, and then I take it real slow. You have that thing when you're dating, when people play hard to get, you want them even more. I like to play that with my clients a bit as well, but don't tell them that. And I did it in the cake world as well. It's a test. If your brand is on point and really connected emotionally with people, and if your marketing has helped deliver the most important messages that you want to communicate about who you are, what you believe in, and how you can seriously serve them, you don't need to close. It's done.
Yeah, that's right. And I really like the idea of making sure that you help them, even if they're not right for you, or if your service isn't right for them, or if let's say maybe they don't even, you don't connect with them on a human level. So you're not right for one another. Then taking them and introducing them to somebody else who might be able to help them better than you can. I think that's the right thing to do. And as you say, they'll remember you for that and probably recommend you first because they know you can be trusted and you'll do the right thing by them regardless of whether they buy your product or your service or not.
Yeah. I mean, that's seriously how I built such a big brand. And with my cake shop and, my business is flourishing now as a result, is serve first. Money later. I'll tell you a beautiful example of that. When I was in my cake shop, this lady came in and she wanted a $100 cake for her husband's birthday. And I just internally groaned. The staff came down and told me because normally she'd be rejected. And so I decided to deal with it myself because the staff were pretty cheesed off because our minimum order was $250. Anyway, I went up there, we gave her the 5-star service, and I thought, oh, God, that's actually going to cost us money to serve this woman, and she's not our customer avatar. We're not going to get anything out of this. But I just went through the machinations because that's what we do. We serve. She went off. A year later, Celine Dion's husband, Rene, called us to make Celine Dion's 40th birthday cake. That woman with the $100 cake happened to be great friends with Celine Dion. You never know who knows who. You've got no idea. So get your head right.
Yeah, that's a fabulous story.
Yeah.
All right. Well, as I say, I could talk customer experience for ages, but I'm aware of the time right now. We have been going for quite some time. So I'd like to move on to the Buzz, which is our innovation round, and it's designed to help our audience who are primarily innovators and leaders in their field with some tips from your experience. So I've got 5 questions, and hopefully you'll give us some really insightful answers that'll help the listener go and do something awesome today as a result.
Yeah.
So number 1 is, what's the number 1 thing you think anyone needs to do to be more innovative?
I think if any innovation that you do is to be successful, it needs to respond to your customers' needs. So operationally or new market-wise.
Yeah, that's a great advice. And I think, the purpose of innovation is not just for the sake of innovation, but certainly, coming back to what you were saying earlier about serving the customer.
Yeah.
Now, you may have already answered this, but perhaps you could give us a snapshot. What's the best thing you've done to develop new ideas?
Crisis is a fantastic kick up the bottom to develop new ideas. I'm an ideas freak. I love ideas. My problem is not having enough. But to develop new ideas, my number 1 piece of advice is respond to needs. Look for underserved customers in your industry and look outside of your industry to what other industries are doing. So when I had a cake shop, I always looked to the fashion world. I never looked to other food businesses. As a consultant, I'm always looking to, what is happening in the technology world rather than what is happening in the business world so much. So looking outside of your industry is, I think, a really big one. And I also think with new ideas is asking your customers. So doing some proper market research. It really amazes me how few people employ that and how powerful it is. So most of my fantastic ideas in business have come from my customers and clients, and that's because I regularly run focus groups.
Yeah. And it comes back to identifying that underserved customer or the need that they have, right? Because unless you ask, how can you know?
Exactly. Yeah. So that's how everything I've done really successfully has come from customers. Yeah.
Now, do you have a favorite resource you use most often?
What does everyone say? Google.
There are a few people that said the internet.
A favorite resource. Yeah, probably, to tell you the truth, I actually, for a lot of my futuristic stuff and a lot of my papers and a lot of my writing, when I'm actually sitting down and doing thought leadership work or trying to look at the way an economy is going to go or develop, I go a lot to history and study history. And so, for example, in this situation we're in now, I'm doing a combination of studying what the economy was like and what was happening after World War II. And also after the Spanish flu, because business comes down to human behavior. Market sentiment comes a lot down to human behavior. So if you can start to predict how humans are going to behave, then you've got to be one step ahead of everybody else.
That's a really interesting answer, and one that I haven't had before, I think. And but your point about understanding human behavior is certainly a very valid one. And there's a lot of stuff going on right now where sometimes I scratch my head a little bit as to why are humans behaving that way. But you're right, because we don't understand that. If you can get a handle on the patterns that might come out of emerging from this current situation, then you can incorporate that into your business thinking.
Exactly. Yeah.
All right. Now, what's the best way to keep a client on track?
On track in what sense?
Well, keep them moving forward towards the goal that they've set in place.
Okay, so one of my coaching or consulting clients to being accountable.
Yeah.
Accountability. Listen, I've got a very simple answer to this, and that is setting the vision so strongly that it's irresistible. And I consider myself a leader in a lot of my clients' lives. I think they need leadership, not necessarily coaching. So I do coach some clients. I wouldn't say I think that probably some of your listeners are better coaches than I am, but what they need is a leadership to set the vision, encourage, enthuse, praise, and also make sure it's something that they're really excited about. That's what great leadership is. Getting your team, setting a vision, and get everybody else so excited about what that vision is. So if you can't do that for your clients, then I think you're failing. So I mean, it's easier said than done, but
yes, that's right.
Always successful, and that's why I say I feel like I fail, because I when I don't get that response from a client, it's disappointing. But there's always other issues at play. But most of my clients are rallying and charging forth to their goals because they're so excited about them.
Yeah, and it comes back to what we were talking about early on in the conversation around what's the meaning behind what we're doing.
Yeah, so relating them back to their values there, and what personally is going to feel successful. They want that feeling.
Okay. And now what's the number one thing anyone can do to differentiate themselves?
I think the number one thing that you can do to differentiate yourself is do you. So people, there's a reason why Gary Vee is so popular, whether you love him or hate him.
Yeah.
He does him, and you can't do Gary Vee. And some people, he does him, and he just does it so well. And if I think that there was a walking, talking example of how to do that, he is it. Oprah's another one. I mean, even Donald Trump is a do you, or as my daughter says, do you, boo. But there is a way of doing that, because I know that a lot of my older clients feel really awkward with doing them, because if you're a Gen X or older, you've always been taught, don't do you. Be quiet, wait to get noticed, don't have a big head. And, that's an indoctrinated thinking that even I can't get over. I can't shed it. So sitting down and working out your personal brand, even just buying a book like Personal Branding for Dummies and going through and doing the exercises in there. Oprah, Gary Vee, Donald Trump, it's still a curated version of them. And there's a method to doing that. And so taking the time to going through a personal branding process to working out what you look like digitally and as a voice in a podcast, etc., is really an important part of that. You don't just do you, warts and all. It's still a curated version of you, but it's you. You're the differentiator. People buy you. And, not everyone's going to love you, but some people are going to think you're amazing and fantastic.
That's right. And they're your ideal audience, your ideal client, right?
Yeah. And
the others you refer on to somebody else.
And then here's the rub. When you're doing you, everything becomes fun and enjoyable, and you don't get exhausted. You become drained when you're trying to do something that you're not.
Exactly, yeah. That's the thing that I always find fascinating, because I see people trying to emulate Gary Vee, for example, and I think, that's just not you, and it must be costing an enormous amount of energy to maintain, because you kind of... you're basically acting a role that is so foreign to you.
Exactly.
It must be so draining.
Totally, putting on that mask. I mean, listen, we all have aspects that we don't like about ourselves. I always wanted to be someone that was really demure and, very elegant and sophisticated. And I'm not. I'm like a really kind of energetic, straight shooter, a bit rough around the edges, very direct. Everybody always says to me, ow, that stings. That's me. But my audience that really gets that loves that.
All right. Well, thanks for getting us through the buzz round. This has been really great. Now, where can people find out more about you? Where can they learn more about you, and maybe even reach out and say thank you for what you've shared with us today?
I'd love to connect with you on LinkedIn. If you're on LinkedIn, please connect with me, Paris Cutler. I don't do Instagram and Facebook so much, but I'm there. Otherwise, check out my website, pariscutler.com, and get in touch. I love catching up with people. I'm in a couple of networking groups. Yeah, it's always just about having a fun time doing this.
All right. Well, we'll post those links in the show notes. And certainly, we connected to you through Chris Yankolowski, and he got us connected through LinkedIn. So
great.
LinkedIn certainly is a good way to do it. All right. Now, do you have a parting piece of advice you'd like to leave our listener today in relation to leadership? You've talked about leadership, and also in being a leader in innovation.
I think people often have the wrong idea about leadership. Leadership is a little old-fashioned part of leadership is really setting a vision for other people to follow. That's leadership in terms of innovation. And leadership is collaborative. It doesn't necessarily mean you charging out front with all the ideas and all of the answers. But what it is it's about creating an environment where it's safe and where people feel it's okay to put themselves out there and put themselves forward. So creating a safety net for people to be able to help you in creating the best product or service that you possibly can. So leadership for me in innovation is collaborative. You're not going to come up with all the ideas yourself. No one can do this on their own. There's too much technology. There's too much advanced. There's too many different markets. You're going to need to collaborate. So lead with the vision. What is the outcome that you want? Get the gang to help you, whether that's your staff or your network or people that you're working with, and then create an environment where it's okay for them to make mistakes and fail, because there'll be some solid gold nuggets that come out of that. It won't be all winning, but have a lot of fun while you're doing it.
Yeah, that's great advice. Lots of really great advice there. And one of the things I heard recently was, particularly in relation to the current environment, a lot of people are kind of going internal, like we talked about early on. And the comment I heard was, in this environment, you're either hiding or you're leading. And, make your choice.
What's really interesting is leadership is not a quote, hey? A lot of people on LinkedIn would like to think, if I just keep putting out these leadership quotes, I might be a leader.
Yeah.
It's not. It's really being able to, I think it's being able to rise up and create a vision of a better future and the possibilities and the opportunities. A big part of being a leader is being an optimistic realist. You've got to be a realist. Magical thinking is a dangerous thing. However, doing that with a sense of optimism is really the key. So you're not going to win a football game by, being a pessimist and getting your team together and saying, well, listen, we could lose this, but let's just give it our best shot. You've got to say, we've got a chance of winning this. We have a chance of finding an opportunity and exploiting that and making it the biggest revenue generator in our business. You have the opportunity now, where there's so much disruption and disorganization, to go out there and establish yourself as a leader in your industry. There is so much opportunity here. That's leadership, is pointing that out and rallying the troops behind you.
Oh, great. That's very inspirational, Paris. Thank you. Now, finally then, who would you like me to chat with on a future InnovaBuzz podcast, and why?
With regards to innovation, I would really like you to speak to Katy Parker, who is revolutionizing the real estate space. And she is a buyer's agent. She's an exclusive bespoke buyer's agent, but her attitude towards the real estate space is very different to anything that's been there before. And so she is an innovator and disruptor.
All right. Well, we'll get an introduction from you to Kitty and reach out to her and have a conversation with her as well.
Fantastic.
So thanks so much for sharing your time and your insights with us so generously today, Paris. I've really enjoyed this, and there's been lots of wonderful messages and hopefully a big inspiration to the listener today to move forward and make the best of the situation we find ourselves in and show true leadership. So I wish all the best for the future and wish you well in the current climate, and let's stay in touch.
Thank you so much, Jürgen. I really enjoyed today. Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed that wonderfully insightful and engaging conversation with Paris and took something away from her episode. Her strong focus on being really clear about your why and setting a vision that is totally irresistible were some of the highlights for me. I'd love to know what you took away from Paris' episode. Leave a comment below the blog post, which you can find at innovabiz.co/Paris Cutler. That is PARISCUTLER. All lowercase, all one word, innovabiz.co/Paris Cutler. You'll also find contact information for getting in touch with Paris there, as well as links to her website, her social media pages, and the other resources we spoke about in today's conversation. Paris suggested that we have a conversation with Katy Parker, founder and director of Kitty and Miles Buyers Agency, on a future InnovaBuzz podcast episode. So Kitty, keep an eye on your inbox for an invitation from us to the InnovaBuzz podcast, courtesy of Paris Cutler. Tune in again to the next episodes of the InnovaBuzz podcast, where we've got some more fantastic guests lined up, including Zachary Babcock of Underdog Empowerment and Noah Labhart of Variable. Thanks for listening to this episode. Make sure you subscribe to the show to be reminded of new episodes. It's free to subscribe. Leave a review if you like. Even if you don't like it, I'm okay with that. I'm asking you to leave a review because it helps other people find this show. Go to InnovaBuzz.co to join our marketing transformation community and access a free gift my team and I made for you. It's the Marketing Master Mini Class. We want to give you everything you need to transform your marketing into a human-centered, relationship-focused growth engine. Until next time, I'm Jürgen Strauss from InnovaBuzz. Remember, be awesome and keep innovating.